Greetings everyone at the A4Q Testing Summit. It is with pleasure to announce our speakers for this session, Rik and Pepijn and Rik. They're both principal consultants in quality engineering and testing. Rik is a TMAP expert, while Pepijn specializes in SAP. Together, they have combined their skills, knowledge, and commitment to create the TMAP quality engineering for SAP training. In this session, they will share the latest insights and developments from this exciting training. Welcome, Rik and Pepijn.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Valida. Well, we're happy to be here. And let's start with our presentation, Quality Engineering for SAP.
Yeah, I will take it away, Rik. Very happy welcome, everyone. Today we will talk about quality engineering for SAP in combination with the TMAP suite and the TMAP trainings. First, a little background, why did it started and for who it is. We created this training. It's very good to know for the target audience, for the key users, and people who are using operations and maintenance. Before we deep dive into the real content of the training and what are we covering, I like to express and share with you what kind of challenges there are currently in an ERP landscape or in an SAP landscape. Rik, next slide, please. When we want to look into the challenges, let me first give some general features about ERP systems. And in general, the size of an ERP system is large, it's huge, and therefore it's also very costly. There are many stakeholders involved, and Rik will elaborate a little bit on stakeholders later on in the presentation as well, but many stakeholders are involved, and because there are so many stakeholders involved, how then do we do process streamlining? How do we get all these people on the same track with the right amount of quality at the right time? So it's very challenging that, again, the size of this ERP system, which is covering core functionality in big organizations, and streamline all the stakeholders involved. And because it's impacting the whole organization as such, it's also high complex. So many departments, many teams, many stakeholders are involved, and how do we align them? And it's not only complexity with stakeholders, it's also complex in the architecture and the landscape. For example, we have the SAP system alone, but we also have legacy systems. How does the integration works? Mainly the ERP system is not a standalone functionality. It's the primary tool in a bigger landscape with all kinds of challenges. And when we look to ERP systems, we mainly go for, and in SAP world, we call it keep the core clean. With other words, we want to stick to the standard solution. So we more or less do not a lot of programming, but we do more configuration. And therefore, there is less development involved. And because there is less development involved, we aim for the business users to get some experience and confidence in the quality. And that's why this course is so relevant for them, because they are key stakeholders in accepting the solution. And last but not least, and I already referred to it a little bit, because we don't do that much of development or unit test as a test variety, we more focus on the integration test with the interfaces, and we focus on the end-to-end test and the user acceptance test, the regression test. These are the features, and the features are combined with the challenges. So how do the challenges look like in SAP, and especially in relation to quality assurance and testing? As said before, there is heavy customizations of existing legacy and ERP SAP systems, because it's an off-the-shelf solution, but that doesn't mean it works for your organization. We need to configure and use the right settings to make it work for your business processes. So that demands a lot of testing and validations if it's really covering the need of your process. As mentioned before, it's not a standalone. There is many legacy third-party systems attached and connected to the SAP landscape. So the architecture, we need to deep dive into the architecture. How do we validate that the inbound, outbound communications are working seamlessly among the whole landscape? And that brings another challenge, that is the complexity of data flows. So within SAP, the data will probably flow from left to right, from top to down. But how are the data flows operating when we also communicate with legacy systems? Is the data available in these other systems, etc., etc.? And another big challenge we often see is like localizations. There is a huge demand on regulations, compliancy requirements. So every year or every month or every half year, there is a new compliancy rule that the organization needs to apply to, or there is new legislations, or there is a new law what the company must follow. So there are non-stop changes in your environment. And when we do an SAP implementation, often it's a multi-year transformation. What does that mean? Does that mean that other programs will be stopped? No, that means there are a lot of dependencies during the SAP implementation and configuration that we need to consider. So how do we deal with the other programs? Which one has more priority? What process goes first? We need to communicate with a lot of stakeholders on different programs, on different levels in the organization to plan all the quality assurance activities. And last but not least, what we often also see is now the move to the cloud. What does that mean for SAP? What kind of impact does that have on security? What kind of impact does that have on the performance? Those are all kind of things we can validate and test with quality engineering. And Rik will tell you a little bit more about what is testing and what is quality engineering.
Yes, thank you, Pepijn. And for that, I would like to start with our voice model. The voice model is it takes business value as its core, as is shown here. So we have the scope of business delivery, and that is what you as an organization want to contribute to the world, so to say. And the first thing you need to define is what kind of business value do you want? And that may be big things or small things. It depends on how often you implement. But the starting point is what is the value you want to contribute? And if you know the business value that you want to have, then you come in the scope of IT delivery. And then you define the objectives needed to be achieved to be able to deliver this business value. And to create or achieve these objectives, you want to build quality in from the start. Whereas often with testing, people think it's something from the end, but we talk about quality engineering, and quality engineering starts at the beginning to build quality in using relevant quality measures that you can apply. Then, of course, you also want to know whether or not you are achieving the objectives to be able to get the pursued business value. So you define indicators and you measure these indicators. And measuring indicators mainly is testing. And this testing supplies information about these indicators, about these objectives, and thus about the pursued business value. And that information is used by stakeholders. And these stakeholders need to decide whether or not they want to go live with the new solution. So they need to have enough confidence that they will get the business value they pursue. And if they do have enough confidence, then they decide to go live. And then the users will experience the real value of the new solution. And when they experience this new value, then also they will get new ideas for value improvement. And that's where you have this value improvement loop. And especially if you have today's agile approaches like Scrum or DevOps, you can implement value quite often. And this value improvement loop will be, reasonably often. So this is the voice model, and probably you already figured out why it's called voice model. That's just the starting letters of the 5 main things: the value, objectives, indicators, confidence, and experience. And by the way, this voice model, we published it in our book, The Quality for DevOps Teams. And which also is the foundation of this whole training course and the TMAP body of knowledge. Now, today we like to talk about quality engineering. And then you may wonder, what is quality engineering? Well, quality engineering is about team members and their stakeholders taking joint responsibility to continuously deliver IT systems with the right quality at the right moment to business people and customers. Now, essential here are two things. One is the joint responsibility. So all people work together to deliver what is needed. And what is needed is the right quality, not necessarily the highest possible quality, because in some definitions it talks about highest quality. But most of the times you don't need the highest possible quality. You need enough quality to achieve the business value. And sometimes the business value depends much more on the right moment than high quality. And of course, the quality must be good enough to get business value, but it must be balanced. So that's why we say right quality at the right moment. Also, quality engineering is a principle of software engineering concerned with applying quality measures to assure the quality of your IT systems. So it's all about applying the right quality measures that you need to get the right level of quality. And that brings us to stakeholder management. So I would like to dive a little bit deeper on who are involved, because we talked about the team and their stakeholders. Well, who are stakeholders in an SAP implementation? In general, a stakeholder is anyone with a viable interest in the business value delivered by the team at all levels in your organization and even outside your organization, because often you have connections with other organizations. So stakeholders may be very many different people. And what you need to do is you need to involve stakeholders and choose them and engage them, because you want to have them really on board in your whole creation of the solution. So you need to think about who are your stakeholders, and they may be various, like the picture shows here. You will have some sort of an inner circle, an outer circle, and the expanded circle. Then you need to think, how do we involve them? That may be in different ways. What is at stake for them? Because they may have very different things they worry about or things they need. What kind of contribution can they give to implementing the solution? And what kind of information do they need? So this is what to think about. And why is stakeholder management so important in SAP implementations? Because these projects are highly complex and they usually have a big organizational impact. So very many people will be involved, and you better inform or involve them as soon as possible to be sure that everybody is working the same direction. And it also has impact on multiple parts of the organization, because even if you have, for example, something that concerns manufacturing of goods, you also have an impact with your financial systems. You probably have an impact with your HR systems because people are involved. So it always has a lot of impact. And therefore, you need to align the people. One thing we like to use there is a stakeholder map. And it starts with your organization. And in your organization, you have the business that is affected and the business that is basically not affected, or at least not directly affected. And within your business, you have the end users, you have business people, business managers, and of course, the important stakeholders in your SAP project are the key users who know best what is needed. Then you have some kind of steering group, program committee, whatever it's called, and they probably involve both parts of not affected and affected. And you have some indirect users that may consider themselves as no stakeholders, but often still are involved. And you have almost in any case connections with the outside world. So you also will have external stakeholders like your customers, but also your suppliers. So there are big and very different stakeholder groups outside your organization. Now, the business affected may still be very different. Like you have finance and sales, but also your warehouse people, your HR system, CRM, the SAP basis functionality, and of course, reporting about everything that's happening in your solution. So stakeholder management is quite complex, but it is very important. Here are some examples of relevant stakeholders, and I'm not gonna read them all out. You can read for yourself, and you see that they are very different. Some are involved in creating SAP systems, some are involved in using SAP systems, and some are involved in organizing the whole process.
Yeah,
Pepijn.
And because all these different stakeholders, and you already saw in the stakeholder map from Rik, no, you have sales, you have finance, you have HR, you have supply chain, name it. We need to cover the end-to-end process. And if you look into the end-to-end process, go to the next one, then we need to set the scenes first. Because what is end-to-end testing? End-to-end testing is a specific test variety where the test object has a large scope. So it's not deep diving into one specific functionality. No, we need to cover the complete business process as a scope. And examples of a chain of systems is often taught like this. So it's a linear process. We have 3, 4, 5 linear processes or steps to do. But in reality, it's even a little bit more complex. We can take side roads. We need to go up and we need to go down. Or even it's a mess. And in SAP and ERP landscapes, it's often like this because we process a message, it goes to the next systems, and then maybe there needs to be another validation done in the previous system before we can continue to the next system. And one of these examples might be a credit check to proceed your sales order, for example. So it is very complex to do end-to-end testing in a smart way. How does it look like? So we have created some kind of an ERP metro map. I will also not deep dive into this map in particular, but what you, for example, see here is, and I take now the yellow line, the sales line here, it starts with a lead, then an opportunity and a forecast, and eventually some approval is needed. We can create a sales order, and hopefully we sell something and money is coming in the organization. Each bubble in this whole sales process is a team of relevant stakeholders. Sometimes it's the same, but often there are many different stakeholders involved. And then I revert back to the stakeholder map of Rik. All these stakeholders, there is something at stake for them. So if there is a big, huge organizational transformation coming, they need to be involved, they need to be informed, and together we need to make we need to make sure that we achieve the right quality at the right moment. And if you look at the whole ERP map right now, we only cover the sales part, but you see all the different streams. And this can be SAP systems, it can also be non-SAP systems, but they're all intertwined and interlinked to each other. That make it very complex to organize. So how does the end-to-end test look like? Actually, we divided the end-to-end in 2 different parts. We have vertical end-to-end test, and the vertical end-to-end test focus on an end-to-end business process per system. So for example, in this picture, we will deep dive into the web portal. So we have just our website where we can put in some orders, or our customers can request for an order, but we need to make sure that this functionality is working perfectly and seamlessly. The same if we take 2-3 steps further, we need to make sure that everything in finance is already perfectly organized and configured. So we have profit centers, we have cost centers, there is a general ledger available, maybe we have some report functionalities in place. So this means for vertical testing, and in this picture we have 5 verticals as an example, we need to make sure that each vertical is working correctly before we really go into the horizontal end-to-end testing. And what is horizontal end-to-end testing? The horizontal testing, end-to-end testing, focus on multiple systems together that support one business process. So we can have multiple horizontal processes in scope, but this covers actually the whole flow. So we start with the sales order, and I'll always use as an example a shoe. We order a yellow shoe, size 45, on the web portal. Then some information about the customer is being captured in the CRM system. Then it's transferred to the sales SAP sales system. We go into the warehouse, we do some pick, pack, and shipping, and eventually, hopefully, some invoices is sent or it's paid. We need to check our accounts payable, accounts receivable, and maybe this specific customer receives a 25% discount or whatever. So here we really focus on one business process, what is covering the whole flow. If you go to the next one, a practical tip: how do we do smart end-to-end testing? And of course, we can start at the beginning. What I said, we order that shoe in the beginning, and we need to have that yellow shoe, size 45, and we start in the web portal. Okay, nice, we ordered that one. And now we go into the CRM system, or maybe the SAP sales system, and there we see this particular article. It's not there, the article number is not available, maybe it's out of stock or whatever, and we do manual testing. I need to go back. Maybe I should not test this process with the yellow shoe, but I need to do it with the red shoe. I see there is five pairs in stock, so now I can proceed, and eventually now I can come to the end. But is that a smart way of testing? No, probably not. So actually, we want to start at the end. So we need to, again, with all the stakeholders, the important stakeholders in this business flow, sit together and determine the desired outcome. So we want to see, for example, that the yellow shoe for this customer will get a 25% discount if they order 25 or more pairs, for example. So if we really know that this is the outcome, then we can go one step back, that in the warehouse, we need to have these 25 pairs in stock. We need to make sure that all these article numbers are available in the sales system. We need to make sure that on the web portal, all this information is there. So we really need to work backwards to assure that all the test data, and I mentioned that in the beginning as well, complex data flows, we need to make sure that this data is available in all the separate systems among the whole flow. So this is like a practical tip, a nice takeaway for you guys to know you can apply this already immediately in the current work situation. When we look into what do we need to test, it's also very important to know what kind of risk does some of these processes have. And therefore, we designed the SAP quality risk analysis. The SAP risk analysis, it's very important that this whole, we do that more or less in a workshop kind of way with, again, the stakeholders to determine what is at risk for them if some kind of process is not working correctly. If you go to the next one. So Rik already deep dived a little bit into the voice model, and the voice model is all about creating confidence in the pursued business value. So if we know what kind of quality level we need and what kind of risks there are outstanding and how we can cover this, then eventually it should say something about the confidence and something about the right quality, not the highest quality, but about the right quality for the solution that we have created. With the SAP quality risk analysis, we will focus on quality engineering activities. If some activity is classified as critical, then we know this has more priority than something what is classified as low. So we can use this for prioritization in performance tasks and execution tasks, for example, and allocate them to team members. When we classify it, it means something is high risk, and if something is high risk, we want to have more confidence that this particular business process is working fine and is meeting our business requirements. If it's a low risk, maybe we apply less test design techniques or whatever, but if this particular risk is not working seamlessly or fine, the organization can still do their day-to-day businesses. In case of a high risk, most likely if there is some flaw in that process, the business is suffering, we cannot deliver the sales order, or we cannot ship that particular shoe to the end customer, but it needs to be fixed. And then there is a third aspect, actually, that is no risk, no test. you can actually reverse this. So if we don't develop anything, then there is no risk and we don't need to test it. But often in ERP systems, there is pre-configured systems, but if there is no risk, we don't need to test them. But if we don't need to test them, then we also should not configure them. And with this whole quality risk analysis, it's important that we know the whole scope per department, but also for the whole horizontal end-to-end flow. If something is classified as a 0, for example, that means we should not do any activities there. We should not design it. We should not configure it. Because if we use it, then somehow there is a low risk that this functionality might not work correctly. How do we set up this quality risk analysis? It's a weighted and a joint view for all people involved. We actually call it a weighted risk analysis or a weighted risk class. We use 2 different teams. It's the IT team, and they are responsible for configuring the whole system, setting up the system, and also maintenance and operation side of the system and the business process. And of course, very important, the business side of this risk. So how often, for example, is this functionality be used? What kind of business impact does it have if this functionality is not working fine? The output of the risk analysis is used for the test strategy. And this test strategy defines the allocation of quality measures to make an optimal distribution of quality measures over test varieties and test approaches. And therefore, we can also assign it to different stakeholders in a different timing. So we can do some test planning and test scheduling. And eventually, because we have the insight in the risk per process, the test strategy gives insight in the required test coverage and test intensity. Eventually, the output of the quality risk analysis can be used for multiple activities like test design, test execution, but also problem fixing. How does the formula look like for the SAP quality risk and SAP quality risk analysis? Again, we have 2 teams, the business teams and the IT teams. When we focus on the business teams, we have 2 elements which are very important: the frequency of use and the business impact. And we multiply that with the input from the IT side. That's the process complexity and the technical impact. We have predefined definitions for this, and they're more or less a little bit adaptive. So per organization, we can change the definition of these predefined definitions, but we rank them between 0 and 5. Again, if we rank everything 0, there is no risk. We should not configure it, and we should not test it. So the minimum score of this one is 0. The maximum score, when we rate everything on 5, is 100. And then we have some overview on the next slide. How will that look like? So when we have the complete scope of all the business processes, the HR processes, the supply chain processes, but even the finance processes, it can be a very long list what is in scope. For each of these processes, we actually need to sit together with the business representative on IT side and business side to create this weighted risk class. And eventually we have in these areas some critical processes, some high processes, some medium processes, and some low processes. So on the left side, you see a small table with a reference class. So if you score between 75 and 100, it might be a very high risk, a critical risk. So we need to do some thoroughly testing there. And if you score between the 0 and the 15, it's a low risk. Also, when we have less time in the project, the D class or the low classes are considered to be done in a later moment in time because the risk is that low. It will not really impact the business that much. Again, what I mentioned, we can use this classification for different priorities and different activities. So delivering the test object, so we can communicate with the solution provider. You should start with these items first because they're very high in risk. So it's better to start working on these activities first. We can do test specification, test execution. So it helps us, it gives them some insight in how to do some planning. And eventually it can also help with problem fixing. So if you find an anomaly during execution, we can communicate and discuss with the solution provider, hey, you really need to fix this issue as soon as possible because it has a huge impact on the critical process. How does it look like in reality? So we have a template available. It's also available on the tmap.net site. We will share the links later in this presentation. But how will it look like? Again, on the left side, you see an example of a list with the business processes per stream. So, for example, we have here inbound processes, and we need to classify them, and then they will score. So, what I normally do, I organize a workshop together with the business and IT together. I explain to them what it's all about. We have the predefined definitions. Maybe we need to adjust it a little bit. We do that together, so we have really a shared common understanding of what we need. The first 4 or 5 lines we fill in together, and then more or less they do understand. It's not a very difficult exercise because we have these predefined definitions. They just fill it out and fill it in, and that gives them some impression. Hey, oh, this is nice. Oh, this is a critical one. This is not a critical one. Oh, this process we only use once per month. But if it's a month-end closure, yeah, then it's still very critical. But we only use it once per time. So really, it gives you insight in the risk classes and how we can actually mitigate them with quality measures. And talking about quality measures and all these things, what we have done, Rik will tell a little bit more about the certification scheme.
Yeah, because there is much more to TMAP and to quality engineering in general and quality engineering for SAP than we can ever tell you in this 45-minute presentation. So therefore, I would like to tell you a little bit more about the TMAP body of knowledge and about the TMAP certification scheme, because TMAP basically is a lot of knowledge brought together from practice. So it's all practical experience that we brought together. And to educate people, there are training courses and exams to really get to understand for different backgrounds what is necessary and what is useful. And of course, certification helps to show that you are adequate at certain things. So let's have a look. So first, the website. And I already showed you the book. We have the latest book in the TMAP body of knowledge, which is Quality for DevOps Teams, but we have several books previous to that. And we have the website. And the website is the core of the body of knowledge, tmap.net. And here you see the opening page where you see, for example, the different IT delivery models that we support. And for SAP, it mainly will be V-model based working, Scrum based, or the demand supply model, which is a hybrid IT delivery model. On the website, we have different possibilities to enter and to find your way. Like if you're new to TMAP, you can find stuff. And there are overall test varieties. And as you can see on the right, SAP testing is one of them. And we continuously add new information to the website as soon as new practical information is achieved. Another thing that's very important of the website are the templates. So from the website, you can download all sorts of templates, and also this is continuously updated and expanded. And these templates are not to be used as such, but they are to inspire you how to set up your own situation, because that's basically why we supply these templates, to give you a good starting point to implement your quality engineering and testing in your organization. Have a look at the tmap.net website to see what valuable stuff is available. Like I told you, there is a certification scheme, and by now we already have people in more than 20 countries certified in the various TMAP certifications. And as you can see, we have them on all continents except Australia. So if some Australian people are listening, you could be the first one on your continent. But for the rest, of course, this is mainly gives you an idea of the scope that we already have with this new certification scheme that just started 3 years ago and is growing very rapidly. And then you may wonder, what are the parts of the certification scheme? Well, on the left, we see the core of the TMAP certification scheme, which is focusing on people that are in IT delivery teams. So you see quality for cross-functional teams, which has all the information needed for all the different people that are in a cross-functional high-performance IT delivery team. And so it is about business analysts, developers, operations people, and testers. And also it is very useful for people like product owners and scrum masters. Then we have TMAP High Performance Quality Engineering, which dives deeper in the engineering side of IT delivery. Think of things like reviews and many other things, test design techniques, for example, and also things about engineering like mutation testing, use of CI/CD pipelines, use of tooling. So that sort of thing on the engineering side. And we have organizing built-in quality at scale, which is especially if you have multiple IT delivery teams in large organizations. For example, when you use the Scaled Agile framework, which is quite known. But all these certifications are basically aiming at people in IT delivery teams. So that's people with an IT background. But for SAP, we noticed that all too often the SAP implementation needs to be guided and supported by business people and operations and maintenance people, because often there is not a core IT delivery team, but IT delivery tasks are supplied by an external supplier, or SAP is implemented without much IT work. So therefore, the new qualification, quality engineering for SAP, focuses on business people, key users, maintenance people, operations people. So all the people involved in accepting and implementing new SAP solutions. And as you can see, the exams are provided by ISQI, and training courses are provided by, of course, Society, because we are the people that created the whole TMAP certification scheme, but also training courses can be supplied by other training providers. Currently, we have about 20 different training providers across the world, and and if new organizations are interested to become an accredited training provider, they can contact ISQI and also make sure that they can provide these training courses or one of these training courses to their audience. Then maybe, Pepijn, you can use 1 or 2 minutes to go a little bit in detail in what this new quality engineering for SAP training course has.
Of course, I'm happy to do that. What Rik was already saying, the new TMAP for SAP quality engineering training course, it's aimed for the business people and the key users, or the key users and the operational people. It's the best of two breeds. So we really use the content of TMAP, the current trainings, and we pick there the high important topics from, and we deepen that and tailor that with the SAP experience we all have. So some of the topics we briefly discussed it already in this training, like the voice model, but also the stakeholder management, and a little bit about the end-to-end testing and the risk analysis, but there are many more topics to be covered. A very important topic, what I like to highlight also, is the organizational change management. It's not often that our testing or quality engineering team is managing this whole process, but also there we are a huge stakeholder and contributor to accepting the solution and giving the confidence in the whole transformation in the organizational change. How do we do that? How do we approach that? There is a whole learning objective dedicated to the organizational change management. Also very important is test tooling and test automation tooling. Often people don't know, or organizations don't know where to start, how to start. So also there we give a brief overview on what kind of test tooling is available, how can you start with test automation tooling, what are the benefits, what are the pitfalls of test automation tool, etc., etc. And also briefly discuss is the IT delivery model. So we have different kind of IT delivery models. for SAP testing, it's mainly the hybrid model. So we deep dive a little bit in the test varieties which are allocated to the hybrid model. So and we focus on 4 specific test design techniques. I don't know by heart, Rik, but there are many test design techniques available. I think more than 25 or something.
Yeah.
So of course you can use them all if you want, and if you're really that eager to do them all. But we only focus on the boundary value analysis, the partitioning,
equivalence partitioning,
the path testing, and exploratory testing. So we only deep dive in those 4 during this whole training. And based on our experience, we see these 4 are covering already a lot of topics and giving the
especially for this audience
key
of key users and operations people, these 4
giving them
are the approaches that they need to do a proper job. Yeah. And if they need more, well, then of course we have the whole TMAP body of knowledge to support them in additional stuff.
And last but not least, the one I want to close with is the test execution, because these key users mainly will do test execution. So what is expected from them when they do test execution? So we give them some tips and some tricks, what they can expect when they are involved in test execution. But it's a brief, in a nutshell, the wheel of contents of this new quality engineering for SAP training course.
Yeah, so this is your way to business value and the right quality at the right moment. And that brings us to the end of our presentation. And well, maybe there are still some questions. So please, Valida, if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. I think your microphone is still muted.
Yeah.
Now, you can hear me now.
Okay.
Thank you very much for sharing your expertise. There is one question. Are there any prerequisites in order to do TMAP SAP training and certification?
Well, basically, there is no strict prerequisites. Of course, it would be nice if you have some experience with SAP and some experience with IT and IT delivery in general. But basically, everybody who is involved, who is part of this target audience, can join such a training course and can the certification. It is a 2-day training course. It's not too extensive. The exam is 25 questions, which is very well doable. We have already done a couple of pilot training courses, and they were very well and enthusiastically accepted. And so it's the target audience can definitely participate.
And to add a little bit on that, there are some exercises during the whole training course that will ask the people experience. So how do you deal with that in your organization? Do you recognize this in your organization? So if you have some SAP experience, it's not needed, but it will make the discussions and the talks a little bit more fluent.
Yeah, and of course, the participants can also learn from each other, from their experiences.
Yeah, that is added value for sure. As your presentation, it is really the added immense value to understanding of quality engineering for SAP. Thank you once again. I think we are pretty much out of time. I will just say to all who are listening to us, in order to find more about this training and certification, please visit, as you already mentioned, tmap.net, but also tmapcert.com in order to stay tuned and to be updated with all information that are coming. Thank you once again very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And good luck with TMAP, everybody.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.